Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you'll get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback or $2.99 ebook download, including Grand Theft Auto, the NYPD's Auto Crime Division. So as per Wikipedia, the Emergency Service Unit, or as we like to call them, ESU, is part of the Special Operations Bureau of the New York City Police Department. The unit provides specialized support and advanced equipment to other NYPD units. Members of the ESU are cross-trained in multiple disciplines for police, medical, and rescue work. Well, let me give you the real deal. The reality is ESU, they're the MacGyvers of the NYPD. We call them for everything. Trapped in an elevator? Call ESU. Barricaded felon? Call ESU. You got a vicious pit bull, a dog running around biting people? Call ESU. But I don't have to keep going on with this, because today's guest is retired Emergency Service Unit Sergeant Kenneth Bowen. Kenny, welcome to the show.
Hello, Vic. How you doing? Thank you for having me today.
A pleasure's mine, and I appreciate you coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I was born in Brooklyn, raised by my mom and pop. My dad was a cop. My mother was a nurse. We grew up in Brooklyn. The best thing, I had the best of both worlds. In the summertime, my parents had a summer house. I spent up near Delhi, New York. They had like 14 or 15 dairy farms. I worked on a bunch of them. So I got to drive tractors, work with machinery, and learned what the farmer's lot was like, and how people get their food and their milk and everything else. So then, you're exposed to it. My father was a detective and a sergeant. His brother was a police officer. My mother's brother was a police officer. So it's sort of like the family business. I idolized all of them, and I was exposed to a lot of detectives and cops. And I eventually took the police test, and I became a policeman myself.
What high school did you go to?
I went to South Shore High School in the Flatland section of Brooklyn.
Okay.
It's on Flatlands and Ralph Avenue.
Before we get into the ESU stuff and the NYPD, you told me something which blew my mind. You said as a young kid, 19, 20 years old, you actually were in the Gemini Lounge on Flatlands Avenue. And just to set this up, the Gemini Lounge, there was a Gambino crew run by Roy DeMeo, and he had a vicious bunch of killers with him. And they estimate probably between 100 and 200 people went into that bar and got lured into the apartment next door and never came out. So you went in there?
Okay, here's the deal. You're a high school kid. I worked in a movie theater. I had a bunch of friends that worked in the movie theater. After work, you're getting out on a weekend night, like 1 o'clock in the morning. You're looking for a place to go for a beer. A lot of places are starting to shut down. One of the guys that I worked with lived near the Gemini Lounge. We go in there. Place looked all right. It wasn't too many people in there. A couple of, swarthy looking people. I had suits and ties, and what the hell do we know? I thought it was just an old man's bar. And you're young and naive, and you don't know really anything about the facts of life. I was a Brooklyn kid, but
right,
I didn't really know any gangsters. But I knew they're around, but I didn't really personally know them. I go in there and we have a beer, and I didn't like the vibe, and I said to my friends, I says, "Let's get out of here. We'll go to the bodega and grab a couple of Heinekens and go sit on the corner and drink." And I go home in the morning. I see my old man, my dad, and he says, "What did you do last night?" I said, "Well, we finished work and we went to the Gemini Lounge, but I didn't like it." He says, "What? Stay the fuck away from there. There's bad people in there. I don't want you in there ever again. Don't ever go in there." He says, "They are not nice people, and nice things are happening there." So after that, I was like, shit.
Do you remember what year that would have been?
I'm going to say like 81.
Yeah. That's when they were really rocking and rolling.
Well, my father was in Queens Homicide in the 80s. He worked on the Lufthansa case, and, he knew what was going on. I remember as a kid around that time, during the Lufthansa case, remember in Goodfellas, they got the black fella who was supposed to get rid of the van. Yeah, he was supposed to get rid of the van. He fell asleep and never got rid, and the cops found it. Well, we're sitting at home. My father had just gotten back from work, and he gets a call. We found it in the 6-7 precinct over by Brookdale Hospital. He says, take a ride with me, take a ride with me. So me and my brother go with him, and it's parked in a like a driveway, blocking the driveway, and it's there. They put it on a flatbed truck
Yeah.
and drove it from by Brookdale Hospital to the Kennedy Airport to some hangar because the FBI had all their
Right.
techs and whatnot. They had like a task force there. And I was like, oh, shit, it's pretty cool. You get to see what it's all about. He says, my father goes, don't be talking about it when you get to school tomorrow. Well, you know, zip the lip because loose lips sink ships.
How cool is that that you were around for that and your dad took you like
Yeah.
on a class trip?
That's it. Yeah, basically. That's a perfect segue. When I was a little boy, probably about 5 or 6 years old, the best thing you could do was take a ride to get my father's check. And he was a detective at the time at the 7-5 squad. And it was it looked like a Ford house on Liberty Avenue in the 7-5. It was replaced after that. But next door was this Truck 7, which was ESU. So my father had made friends with some of the guys in the ESU truck, and he took us over there. They had this big diamond reel rescue truck, and I was afraid to get on the truck. And lo and behold, like 20 years later, when I became a ESU cop, I had to drive a ESU truck, and that was part of the kick of it all.
So that planted the seed, definitely. And plus,
Yeah,
I mean, around
bit.
the dinner table, your dad's talking about these cases and locking this guy up. And your dad,
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't like your dad just was a cop. He was he worked in a squad. So he's talking about all these fascinating cases that you're reading about in the paper.
Yes. My dad had been a cop. He started in 1958, and he was one of the first original TPF cops. You had to be single, over 6 foot, and they were basically handpicked. And they took a lot of some of the newer guys out of the academy because they wanted mostly single guys. They took some married people, and they were encouraged to make arrests and take care of business on the streets. And that's what they did. And it was really a pathway to the detective bureau if you were successful. If you didn't, well, you could find a precinct, or they would try and find a soft landing spot for you. And he excelled, and he landed up in the detective bureau. And
cool is that?
Yeah.
What was your first precinct out of the police academy?
I went to NSU 3, which was in the Midtown North precinct at the time, and that's three precincts. It was the Midtown North, Midtown South, and the 17th. When I got on a job, that 6-month period, we spent a lot of time doing that. I think every labor union in the city of New York went on strike that summer. So we went from June to January. Con Edison, the telephone company strike, the Furrier strike, Greyhound buses went on strike. So we had all those strike posts. So you learned how to hold up wooden barriers. You got 9 radio car tours with a FTO. And then you also, you had, just before I started the job, they had one police plaza. They had the bombings at one police plaza where the bomb squad guys got hurt.
Yeah.
So they augmented the headquarters security with flying in NSU cops and precinct cops to augment the security detail there. Then from there, I went to Midtown North. I basically stayed there for 4 years.
What was it like as a young cop to work there?
It was a great place to work. It had a little bit of everything, all the crimes that you would find anywhere else, but people, a lot of people. It was a lot of, there was like almost 350 cops in that precinct. So you had the 9 squad chart, they had a theater detail, they had a day squad, they had anti-crime. It was like 50 people in the anti-crime because they went around the clock, all 3 tours. And, the west side was a little grungy. You had the Westies. The east side was a little quieter, but you had a lot of the, all the stores, the Macy's, not Macy's, all the big name shops were on Fifth Avenue. So a lot of holding ones, a lot of Tiffany's, Diamonds. Then you also had the Diamond District, which is 47th Street.
Right, yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff going on there. There was always robberies, and guys getting robbed, their jewelry and their diamonds getting ripped off there. But during my NSU tour, the 6 months, we used to have to go to the missions, the
Yeah.
Cuban mission, the Turkish mission, and the U.S. mission. They would fly NSU cops there during the day tour and the 4 to 12s so that the 17th precinct didn't have to cover it. They only covered it on the late tours for the most part. And the 83 sergeant's exam, I got sent with a bunch of guys from my squad in NSU to the 17th precinct for the late tour to do patrol. And I worked with a Lieutenant Richie Young. And Lieutenant Young had been a sergeant and a cop in ESU. So now we're working together, and as luck would have it, he's telling me all these stories about ESU and how he wants to go back. And, where I had a good night, he was telling me all the stories about ESU. And we ended up getting a call for a person possibly in the water at like 60th Street at the heliport. And that was, I guess, the borderline of 18th and the 17th. He says, "Oh, let's get up there." So we get up there. He says, "What I want you to do is you go get the spare tire out of the RMP, and I'm going to go look and see if I can see anybody." He says, "And there should be a ring buoy and a rope. Take all that stuff out." We get there. There was nobody. If they were there, they were gone because the current was so strong there. But that was another sign that all those stories put an idea on my head that that's somewhere I think I'd like to go. Plus, I used to run into jumper downs. I ran into you call ESU for everything, and if it's something you can't handle, those are the guys to call because they're not going to let you hang. They're going to make sure that they find a solution, and they're going to do it as painlessly as possible so that you don't get stuck there. That's the last thing. You know how cops are.
Yeah.
They want to get through the job and go on to the next job or sign out at the end of the tour. And that's basically what we were taught to do, is you're there for the cops. And no is not in your vocabulary. No, I can't do that. No, yes, you're going to find a solution. You're not going to leave anybody hanging.
So you put in for ESU. Can you explain? Can you walk us through like the vetting process? You fill out an application, you put it in.
Okay, so I filled out an application, and of course you got to get your squad sergeant and your CO's authorization. You got to have at least, back then it was 3 years in the police department on patrol. Plus guys, a lot of guys have previous skills, trades, EMT skills, EMT licenses, drove commercial vehicles, anything that is helpful in resolving problems. It's military veterans, they like that. And then you have to go for an interview, and it was 2 lieutenants and the XO of the precinct, XO of ESU. At the time, there was no career path in ESU. It was you were going to be a cop, and unless you took the supervisory route and took a civil service test, the likelihood of getting a detective shield for a specialist were pretty slim. And that's basically, they made it very clear to you that was, if you come here, you don't expect a gold shield. That's not coming. Subsequent years later, they gave like 1 per truck, a specialist shield. And usually the senior guy, most of the senior guys got that, and they deservedly so. But then after you pass your interview, they do a round robin,
Background check.
Make sure your sick record, make sure you're not no CCRB. You can have CCRBs, but not be on the list of high CCRBs.
And what they're for, and
they vet it very carefully to make sure that you're not on the list of people that they don't want in the unit. Then you have to go for the shotgun 1-day thing to make sure that you're not afraid of the shotgun, because some guys they've never been around them. I didn't really have that much experience with shotguns, but it's a pretty easy concept to figure out once you're given a little instruction, and that's basically what we did.
Were you trained? Were you trained with the pump?
Yeah, it's a Ithaca 30.
The reason I asked, when I was in Manhattan North Narcotics, they sent us for the 1-day shotgun training, but it was the front brake, 2
the double
shells,
barrel,
Elmer Fudd, click. I think it was 2 triggers.
Right.
And it was funny you should say that because they sent a bunch of guys from Manhattan North Narcotics for shotgun training, and there was a couple of guys, like you said, couldn't handle the shotgun. And I had never handled a shotgun before and left a little bit of a bruise, but there was a couple of guys that were holding it wrong and like
Yeah.
they looked like they needed surgery, like their whole
Yeah.
shoulder lit up and they didn't qualify.
Yeah. Well, it definitely it takes a little practice, a little
Yeah.
the technique. Once you get the technique down, it's good, and then you just gotta wait, and you wait till they have openings. I was when I was looking to come in, the classes from the late '60s, a lot of guys were retiring. There had been a lot of overtime previous to me getting there because of the Larry Davis caper, and I led up. They had like 70 of us get transferred to ESU, and we went to Floyd Bennett Field where most of the training was done, and it was about 6 weeks of training at that time. Hazmat, ropes. Yeah, they handed you a piece of rope, right, about a 4 foot piece of rope, and we went through all the different rope knots that were applicable to what we needed to do. And that's all you kept doing. And you'd get a knot test. Then it was hazmat, rappelling. They taught us all the rappelling. We spent like 3 or 4 days in Staten Island in Seaview Hospital. It was an old hospital. And we rappelled out of the like the fifth story. The highest floor was like the fifth or sixth story. And at first it's mind over matter. Heights, some guys don't like it. They some of their instructors would say, "Hey, just got to get through it now because there'll be guys crawling up your back if you on a job if you don't hustle. They'll go right over your back and you can stay on the bottom." But you got to get through it right now. I had no problems with it. It was a good school. I had made lifelong friends, and you learned everything that you needed to know, the basics. We went to the housing authority had a elevator school that we went to East New York for. Otis Elevator brought a couple of techs in. They showed us a bunch of stuff, and we did hazmat. And then they would bring you back. Well, we did a week in John Jay College for emotionally disturbed people. It's called a New York State certified psychological tech, and it helps you when you're at a barricade situation or an EDP situation, how to try and, based on their symptoms and what they tell you, how to try and relate to them. And once you know, basically what their problems are, you can try and gear your responses to their actions through verbal talk, and that was useful. And then after that, you graduated, and then you would go to you would go to a truck, and that's where the real on the job training happened. You would get assigned to a truck, and the guys would teach you.
People don't, for people that weren't on our job, the
Right.
amount of training these guys go through, you guys, you do also during your training climb a bridge, right? There's a bridge
Yes,
climb?
we did the Brooklyn Bridge, and we did it a couple of times before the official test, but they paired us off into groups, and one day one group would be one place, one group would be another place. That's then as a group we all went up the last time together.
You go up
But,
that catwalk to the top of the bridge.
right, you ride on the cables. It's
There'd be no way.
you know what you say that, but if you have confidence in the equipment that you have and you want to do it, if it's something you want to do to be part of that unit, you're going to do what you got to do. Just like, I mean, you knew about cars, right?
Yeah, but crawling underneath the car for a vehicle identification number and climbing the cables of the Brooklyn Bridge with the wind and the height up there, apples and oranges, Kenny. There'd be no. I mean, if my life depended on it, and someone was like, "You got to go," maybe. But just for shits and giggles that I want to join, there would be no way. I don't have that makeup.
Well, then you'll be calling me. You would be calling me, and I would go take care of business.
Okay.
And when I need the confidential VIN check, I'll call you or my brother.
That's right. We'll get into your brother in a minute. You also, did you have scuba training?
The scuba came after I had already been in, and that was at the time it was a voluntary thing, and I'm not as good a swimmer as I'd like to have been, so I didn't really. Now it's mandatory, you got it, but back then it was a voluntary situation because they already had a scuba team.
And weren't you guys also trained? Well, I know this for a fact because, and I'll explain how I know, but you guys are also trained. You guys are like locksmiths. You guys can pick a variety of locks.
Yes. Well, we as part of the we had guys. Everybody brought something different to the table, and we had a couple of guys who were talented locksmiths, and you know, they share their knowledge, and that's how you learn. You learn by watching. You learn by doing, and you spread the wealth. You know, if you know you have a trick that are you going to share it with your partner? You know, as long as it's worthwhile, of course you are. You're gonna make him a better person by doing that, and help the next guy out. You know.
The reason I know you guys are skilled locksmiths, so I worked in the 50 up in Riverdale, and we had a crusty highway safety officer that used to hoard the equipment, like the come-alongs or the Polaroid shit that's supposed to be in the trunk of the car.
Yeah.
He would only give it out to his buddies.
Yeah.
So I got tired of it. And one day I watched him go into the precinct garage, and he came out about 10 minutes later with some stuff. So I found the room, and it was locked. So truck 4, I think it is, right? In the Bronx, up in
Yes.
So I went to truck 4 with a box of assorted donuts, and I go, I lost the key for the room in there. Can you guys pick it? Like, oh yeah. They went out there, they opened the lock, and it was the funniest thing.
About 2 minutes.
Yeah, and when they opened the lock, like the one ESU guy's got like sugar all over him from the donut. He's actually doing it while he's eating the donut, right? And when he opens the door, he sees all the equipment, and he goes, "Holy shit!" He goes, "Look at the amount of stuff." Like this guy was hoarding it. So then what I did was I go, "All right, guys, thanks." And then I started passing the equipment out, and the guy had his shit fit when he found out that I got in there.
You know what? It wasn't his equipment to hoard like that. You know, spread the wealth. You know, if somebody needs it, they should be able to get it. As long as they're not taking it home with them. If there's a righteous purpose for it, spread it out. Guy, that's what it's there for. But it's really not that hard to figure out. Once you get the skill, it's just a little finesse. You take the tension wrench and you go in there and you try and pick the lock, and it's really not that hard. If I can do it, anybody can do it. It just takes. It's like going to Carnegie Hall, practice. That's how you get to Carnegie Hall. Practice.
You were trained on the shotgun. What other weapons were you trained on in ESU?
We had everybody had to be able to use a sniper rifle, and that was a Remington 660, fired a 223 round, and we sighted in for like I think 300 yards, and then we had the Mini 14. It's a Ruger, and that has a 223 round, and that's like a semi-automatic rifle, iron sights. And then we had when I first got in, it was a M76 open bolt machine gun, and that was a little tricky because you could slam it against something, and the slider move forward, and you could discharge, have an AD, accidental discharge. But they switched to the MP5, which was closed bolt and had a nice metal sight. So, and you had to qualify like 3 times a year with the heavy weapons and your service weapons.
It was funny sometimes being out in the range, and we'd see a bunch of ESU guys, and they would march you guys off somewhere. Like you guys weren't on like Adam, Charlie, David range. You guys had your own spot. And it sounded like Beirut over there, like just because I mean, you know how it is at the range when you go to qualify. There's 50 cops in a row. It's like the Revolutionary War. You know, it's like on the mark, pop, 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 and then you hear.
Yeah. I think it was Eddie Range. Don't quote me on it. I think it was Eddie Range. It was like the last range going towards where the bomb squad area was, and we'd walk over, and we had our own. We had our own guys from the range that did it steady, and they did us, and I think they did the highway guys, the shotguns for the highway guys. But they were good guys, and I picked up a lot of tips from them, and I wasn't quick draw McGraw, but I finally figured it all out. not everybody's a gun nut. You know what I mean?
Can you give an example of the kinds of equipment that are in the big ESU trucks?
Okay, so the big trucks have medical equipment. They have Scott packs. They have a full arsenal of heavy weapons. We have nets, all sorts of uh, purse tools and cutters and rabbit tools and all sorts of hand tools. We have hazmat gear. We have usually they have a raft with a motor. Anything that you need, they got it.
I just remember like always being in amazement watching the ESU guys work. It was almost like watching my dad in the basement, like when I screwed something up, just get out of the way. I'll fix this or I'll take it apart.
Yeah.
I remember early in my career being at a protest and a bunch of these people chained themselves through PVC. They ran chains through PVC pipe and other stuff. And the ESU guys just showed up with that wizard tool and just just cut the whole thing apart, and we just cuffed them up and took them away.
The as you said, demonstrations. I remember going to a bunch of abortion clinics and having people.
That's what it was for.
The contraptions that they lock their heads to it, and next thing you know, now we got the captain on the scene or the inspector on the scene goes, we're going to arrest them, get them out of this thing, and now you start cutting them with these wizard tools. At first, we used to have a wizard tool that was run by a air bottle, and you'd go through like 3 or 4 air bottles in the course of like an hour trying to get people out. And then it came out with an electric one, and it was much better. But now you got to you're cutting metal, and there's flames spewing out of the wizard tool,
Sparks
and it's getting hot.
Yep.
And now you got we used to we had these blankets. They were impregnated with like petroleum jelly to keep people from like a burn blanket. So if you got burnt, you would put that on there so to keep them from reigniting the burns or to soothe them. So we used to throw them on there. It was like all gloppy and oh, what are you doing? Hey, we want to protect you. That's why we're doing it. And, but you got to do what you got to do. I could tell you a story. We get called to St. Vincent, not St. Vincent, St. Luke's up in the 2-6 for a ring on a gentleman's penis. And what happened was he had it on it. He had a high school or college ring, like the Jostins.
Yeah, with the stone on it.
Gold sterling silver high school ring. He's got it on his, let's say, his corporation, so to speak, and it's engorged, and there's a whole mess. And it's me and my partner. I'm in the truck with another cop, and I'm actually the sergeant. So we go in there, and the nurse said, "We tried with our ring cutter. Now the ring cutter was like worn down. It wasn't even making a dent in it. So we tried our ring cutter, and we dulled about 3 blades. So we decide we're going to use the wizard tool. So we start up, and he's like, "Oh, no, 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 no." And I says, "It's going to be all right. Just don't move." So I took a bottle and an empty spray bottle and put water in it. And we put asbestos like blankets, like it was not asbestos, but flame like for welding. And we put it around his legs and around the important vital organs. And we start. I'm holding the spray bottle and the porta light, and my partner starts cutting, and now the blood curdling screams because it's starting to heat up. So I'm spraying it, trying to quench it and we had to cut it twice because it was too thick. So we had to make 2 cuts, and then we had to spread it with pliers. They'll never do that again, that's for sure. But what are you going to do? There's 8 million stories in the naked city, if you know what I mean.
I wasn't expecting to hear that one. That's holy. Have you ever?
I hope that doesn't offend you in any way.
No, I don't care. That guy's an idiot. Have you ever had to extract someone that was impaled, like cut them? Like I know, like someone gets stuck on a fence, gets impaled or something. They have to cut the fence and then remove them with the fence still in them to the hospital.
That's basically the procedure. Well, a lot of times they'll get impaled on like a fence if they jumped and they impale themselves on a fence or fall. I had a person tripped while they were walking their dog onto the low flower fencing, and it has like spikes like around the curb, and they fell into it and they caught that. They had to cut the section that had impaled them, and they brought them to Bellevue. And you got to do what you got to do. You just make sure you prop it up and keep it so it doesn't move, because you'll do more damage by just extracting it on the scene, and you got to worry about bleeding. So that's why they encourage us, and the best medical practice is to bring the whole body to the hospital with that item, and they in the operating room they can turn around and extract it. They have similar equipment, but it's probably usually not flammable or anything like that.
And ESU cops are often called to barricaded EDPs or emotionally disturbed persons.
Yes.
So I'm sure you've had your fair share of those, because after Eleanor bumpers and everything else, they call ESU for everything. I used to feel bad. They would call you guys for absolutely everything. Does one stick out to you?
Well, I've had many of them. It's a slippery slope, because you got to make sure that you protect your people, and you got to protect the emotionally disturbed person and his family. So you want to turn around and tactically be sound and make sure that you follow the procedure and take care of business, because if anything goes wrong, you're going to be looked at through a microscope. So, and I just know that they're difficult to deal with, and you want to be mindful. But the training that we get from the psychological first aid definitely helps. But there's so many of them. It's so many of them that one floats into the next. You know what I'm saying? And you just take care and concern. And the bottom line is, you want to make sure that at the end of the day they get the treatment they need, and the cops get what they need, and we all sign out safe at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying?
No, listen, absolutely. Like I said, and that's why they used to err on the side of caution and call you guys for everything.
Right. Well, it's an automatic call for us right off the bat. Once they say EDP, it goes through central dispatch right to ESU, gets a notification. Do we go to everyone? Probably not. We're checking through division most times. We're heading in that direction, especially depending on the severity that you get. We're monitoring the division radio and citywide. We're heading in that direction. But if the first unit gets there and they evaluate it, if they don't need us, they'll usually cancel us. But it's part of our milk and cookies. You gotta do what you gotta do, and that's part of our job, is to make sure that they're safe and make sure the guys and gals that work the streets are safe. We have all the equipment, the tasers, the EDP blankets, everything you need. We got it, and we do what we got to do.
I'm sure you've had to dart a lot of dogs.
I've had my share of dogs. I've had my share. We had a coyote in Central Park that was comical. That thing, it was like about 3 or 4 days. We're getting calls up the yin yang, and it was hanging around the 2-4 precinct. Then it walked across, I guess, one of the main streets into the park, and then it was being seen by the park. They finally, I forget exactly what street it was on, but it was right near like a lake, and they got it cornered, and we got there, and it was sort of like a safari, and we finally darted it, and it ran off. And usually you put in, it's like 1 cc of Kenneth for every 30 pounds of dog. And usually, I've never seen anything less than a 90-pound dog, especially like wild, because a coyote's kind of wild. So you want to turn around and make sure that you get them knocked out, because you don't want anybody getting bit. So we finally get it darted. It runs off, and it goes right between the legs of a horse. Some person was riding on a horse in the middle of the park, and the right next to the horse was Sharon Stone, and she had a lot to say about why are they chasing that coyote. Typical liberal. He had nothing constructive to say, just criticism. But we got him, and it made the papers and stuff like that. Dogs, cats. One of my guys had the tiger in Harlem there.
Oh, you remember that?
Marty Duffy, God bless him, he's a good man. That's one of the things they train us. And you know what? It falls to us, because ASPCA is a Monday to Friday.
Right.
They don't work weekends. The Center for Animal Control, they have staff in their facility, but they don't come out for animals. So who's it fall on? The guys from ESU basically take care of business. I remember one Sunday afternoon, we got called to a housing project on the east side in the like 80s and 90s. 80 pit bulls in an apartment.
Oh.
Can you imagine the smell of urine?
Yep.
The smell of ammonia and urine? 80 of them, from adult to puppies, in all crates. And I'm allergic to dogs. And I had to smell that. My nose was running like a river. But we took care of business and we got them all to the ASPCA. But
I once called, I've told this story in this podcast. I walked into a cockfight ring.
yeah,
I was looking for stolen mopeds. And I
Yeah.
walked into a basement off of Hawkstone Avenue in the fourth floor off the concourse, and it was a breeding ground. And I gave it to the ASPCA. I'm sure they called you guys when they went to hit but the smell
sure.
from all those friggin' chickens and roosters. I mean, there was hundreds of them in this basement common area.
And you got to figure that can be a little explosive, that chicken crap. It's
Well, I didn't even think of that.
ammonia. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Like,
yeah.
I didn't even think of that. So you must have spent your fair share in the subway, right? On different jobs, or was that transit?
We handle a lot of man-under jobs. You make sure the power's off, and then you take care of what you got to take care of. I was fortunate that when we had the merge, I got a bunch of guys from transit, and they were very good. And the transit, they had before the merge, there was a housing rescue and there was a
Right.
transit rescue, and I was fortunate enough to get some of the guys from each one, and they were very generous with knowledge and experience. Every little bit of experience. When you're a young ESU cop, the best thing to do is keep your eyes open and your mouth shut. You may know a lot of stuff. They gave you 6 months, especially nowadays, they gave you 6 months of training and you learned a lot of stuff. But when you're out there, listen to the experienced guys, and sooner or later, you're going to get all the on-the-job training, and before you know it, you'll be like Felix the Cat. You'll have a bag of tricks, and that's basically how I used to tell my guys.
Did you ever have someone that was pinned between the platform and the train?
I personally didn't, but that's called what we call a space case, and it's not usually a positive
No.
because what happens is the body gets they be talking to you, and once they relieve the pressure, all the blood drops, and it's usually a detrimental and deadly result.
Yeah, I'm glad I never had to see that. I've heard stories from transit cops about that. It just sad. Well, it's a terrible way to go.
It's not. It's usually not a good ending if you land up on the bad side of a train, even a bus. You get hit by a bus. It's not a good.
And yeah, that's very true. You worked for a while in the violent felony apprehension team. Did you like that?
It was the apprehension team. Is what you do is every cop in ESU and every sergeant has to at some point go through it. They have one set apprehension team, and then we would rotate the second because they work round the clock. Well, actually, days and 4 to 12s, and then the trucks usually do the night tour, midnight tour warrants. But you would go there. Like I went from like September to January of '99. I got to pick my team, and they had like 2 or 3 guys that were steady in the apprehension team, and you would turn out a Fort Taunton, and there would be they would call with a list of precincts that had warrants that needed to be executed on any given day, and we would go from one place to the other, they called it a bread truck, and we would go in the bread truck and go from one place to the other, do the warrants, and we had a standard stack, two bunker teams, two guys who handled the entry with getting into the entry, and a supervisor. And it's repetition and tactics, and you'll keep a good result if you do it by the numbers.
Yeah, they started calling. Like when I worked in Manhattan North Narcotics, we did all the entries on search warrants. But now I know they use ESU for every search warrant. They bring them in.
The They started really having a apprehension team after Larry Davis. There was a lot of on both sides of the game. They wanted to make sure that safety was the paramount. ESU's goal was to get the guy, and whatever it took to do it, we would do. Detectives have a different
Oh yeah,
mindset. They want to get it when they want to get it.
it's
You
true.
know,
It's true.
yeah.
I
And,
agree.
and both are noble professions. I have all the respect in the world, but we do what we got to do, and we do it tactically the way we want to do it. They have they want to just go in and,
Kick in
you
the
know,
door and
believe me, I was raised in a guy that was his thing. Give me a double barrel shotgun and let me go in and take care of business. But after Larry Davis, the powers that be decided that this was the way to go with a apprehension style, heavy vest, heavy weapons, tactical entry. If we got to boom the door, we boom the door. But that's how we do it.
I agree. I know what I wanted to ask you. You probably, at every presidential detail, there's always, it seems like a heavy ESU presence. What's that like working a presidential deal when the president comes into town and you guys are going with the motorcade?
Yes, we usually have a team that's assigned to the motorcade. Then we also have interior stairwell, say the President of the United States or uh, ambassadors and secretaries, and sometimes even, like, I remember one time we had the Prime Minister of Iran or whatever, and Turkey. We had to do stairwell details at the hotels, and it's you just stay on your toes and you do what you got to do. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. As a cop, you got to be able to realize that's part of your gig.
You guys come in handy for anything. You guys are jack of all trades. So I would imagine with a presidential detail, they got you guys there. I mean, not only, obviously you guys are trained in the heavy weapons, but anything goes wrong, you guys can fix or rig or make it work.
Basically, we're there to solve any problems that we can do to get things done the right way.
It's funny how people meet, and the way Kenny and I met was he reached out to me on social media because he had seen I did an episode about this cop that destroyed an elevator trying to get a couple of people out. We were waiting for emergency service, and this cop who I called Inspector Gadget basically destroyed an elevator and he couldn't get them out anyway. And then ESU came and they had to do it. So he reached out to me. We started going back and forth because he explained, you got to shut the power off. You got to do this and this. And if people would just wait for the experts to arrive to take care of something as opposed to just going in blind.
Basically, elevator jobs, gain entries unaided. We realize people don't want to be in that elevator. It's probably hot. They get claustrophobic. I can understand and empathize with that. But if you start fooling around with an elevator and you don't know what you're doing, you could be putting yourself in more danger than it's really worth. There's the silent killer, which is if you actually manage to get outside of the elevator, and on the top of the elevator there's the counterweights. That's called the silent killer, because when the elevator goes up, the counterweights come down, and if you're not prepared for it, you could get crushed and killed by that. A lot of the jobs, it's repetition and finesse, picking locks, making sure that you can get in an elevator door without breaking it up. There's elevator keys. There's different. Each manufacturer, each manufacturer has a different set of keys. Housing elevators have different keys, and it's just knowing we have elevator kits on the trucks. It's just being able to identify what the elevator door is and how it works, and using the proper key, because you don't want to be doing damage to an elevator door, because you screw it up. It's a mechanical thing. It's on a track, big bucks, and the city's got to pay for it. And guess what? They're going to say, "Why didn't you wait for ESU?" They're trained to do it. You don't want to be in that position, and you don't want to be the guy that's got to sit there, and then the next guy that relieves you has to sit there, because say it's in a housing authority building. It could be say it happens on a Saturday afternoon. You could be waiting till Monday afternoon before somebody shows up.
Easy.
Our credo was there to help the cops, and you don't want to leave them with a bag of crap. You want to make sure you finesse it, and that they can go about their business. When you leave, they can leave. They're not going to want to be calling you if you leave them with a bag of crap. and they got to sit there for days upon days. You want to say, yes, I can handle that, and I will take care of business. 'Cause that's what we're there for.
You and I were talking before we got rolling with this interview, and you have a brother that worked in the auto crime division, but he was there before I got there, and we were going back and forth with different guys. And you told me a wild story about your brother and his partner doing a car stop with a guy with a bomb in the car. Could you just tell that story?
Yes, it was in the, I'm going to say in the, like 89 or 90. My brother was assigned to the auto crime division, and he was working in Queens at the time with his sergeant, and the sergeant and himself. I'm going to keep their names out of it.
Yeah.
They were on routine patrol, and they come upon a car that they felt was not right. And as a detective, things that stand out, especially if you're in the auto crime unit. Certain cars don't look right, and as officers of the law, we can pull cars over and check for licenses and registrations. Well, they did so. My brother was in the passenger side, and his sergeant was on the driver's side. When the sergeant asked the driver for his information, he said that I'm not giving you anything. And in fact, if you don't get away from me, I'm going to put my hands together and set off this bomb that I have strapped to me. So the sergeant, since the window was open, grabbed the one arm and kept it away from the other arm and yelled to my brother to help him. My brother spoke to the passenger and said, get up against the wall and don't move or I'll shoot you. And at that point, he came around and helped his sergeant. They pulled him out of the car, laid him on the ground, and called for ESU. ESU showed up. They helped hold him down. One of the other guys got a bomb blanket, and then they called the bomb squad. The bomb squad came. Detective from the bomb squad took care of getting it so that it wouldn't immediately blow up. And then they took the suspect to jail, and they took the bomb to the outdoor range, and it was in fact a explosive.
And then you say they had a victim in the car?
Yes, apparently, upon the further investigation, that these two individuals were taking a lady that was in the trunk, pardon me, from bank to bank and using her bank card to withdraw funds. And it was basically a strong arm robbery. The things you run into when you're out on patrol, both of them were just going about their business, trying to do the right thing. And they actually saved this lady's life. So who knows what would have happened if they didn't come upon them.
The way they handled it worked. It might have been two other cops. Might have went another way.
It's your partner is your you kind of know them enough that you can fill in their own sentences when they leave something blank. You know their mindset
and their voice and how they sound.
Yeah, you can anticipate their next move.
Yeah.
When something ain't kosher, you're gonna be right there to help them, and it worked out that way.
Kenny Bowen, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Vic, it was my pleasure, and I want to say a couple of things that
absolutely.
One, Vic, what you're doing with this podcast is great. It's helping other people see what the cops on the street are doing, cops from our time were doing, and basically they were trying to help others. There's no, good-hearted people and trying to solve problems and trying to navigate life and be good to one another. That's all. And I think this podcast reflects that. And I appreciate you. And your books are very good. The stories are very instructive and funny. And you don't really disseminate too much or make anybody look too foolish. But as I usually tell people, cops are part of the community. There's no special tree that you pull like a cop off a tree. We're part of the community. We're living out here. We're just trying to make a living. We're just trying to raise our families and do right, help people. It's important that we get a fair shake, and you're doing a great job. And thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
As always, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my listeners in Baltimore, Maryland, West Palm Beach, Florida, Eden, Utah, Manheim, Pennsylvania, and of course, Tracy and Scott Brown and their blue tick coonhound Archie of Hartwell, Georgia. If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background, please drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram at VicFerrari50. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like or subscribe button. And if you enjoy the content, check out my Amazon author page. Just type in my name, Vic, Ferrari like the car, where you can preview all my NYPD books for free, including Grand Theft Auto. Thank you again, and I'll have another episode out next week.